Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting and informative episode of Let's Discuss podcast. Today we have the privilege of hosting a distinguished guest, Pat Veilleux. Pat is a seasoned legal professional and a true expert in the field of technology law. With over 16 years of experience, he has been the driving force behind the success of some of the world's fastest growing technology companies. From his role as an in-house counsel at Shopify to his current position as a fractional GC at Veilleux Law in the beautiful Tabernacle, Costa Rica. Patrick is here to share his insights into leveraging generative AI for the legal professionals. But before we get into the heart of this podcast, let's get to know Pat a little bit. So, Pat, please tell us about your journey, your passion for in-house counsel, and how you became the go-to person for legal guidance in the tech industry.
Thanks, Avi. I'm really happy to be here. My journey would, if you would look at it on a graph, you would think it's somewhat eclectic for a lawyer, because I started right out of law school following a traditional path where I articled for a big law firm and started out as most of us do in litigation. And from there, after a few years, I completely flipped from the litigation realm, and I went into government in Canada. And so I started working. I took off my barrister's hat and I put on my solicitor's hat to really dive into the world of contract negotiation, contract drafting, through federal government procurement. And that's where I really found what you might say is at least the foundations of my calling, which was to be a strategic legal advisor, contract negotiator, a builder, if you will, of legal mechanisms and instruments and processes from inside a team or a company. And I enjoyed that for close to a decade. Until then, a tremendous opportunity arose where I lived in Ottawa, Canada, and there was this fantastic company based in Ottawa called Shopify. Shopify was already public, was already quite big, not as big as it is now. And so there was a really good opportunity to join the commercial legal team and to really hone in and learn and develop the craft of practicing technology law. And doing that for 5 years was a fantastic experience. So by the end of it, I'd had about 15 or 16 years of experience merging dispute resolution from litigation, merging strategic contract drafting and negotiations from my time in government. And then I supplemented that and really leveled up on the technology side of things. And during my time at Shopify, that's when the GDPR came into force in Europe. And so that added a whole privacy element to my tool set, if you will. And well, from there, just a little over a year ago, I decided that I was at a bit of a crossroads in my career and figuring out, okay, what's going to be the second half of my career? What is that going to look like? And I absolutely love being in-house counsel. I like working with teams in a certain size of team at a certain juncture, at a certain inflection point in a startup's journey, in a company's journey. And so through a lot of thought and consideration, the answer that came to me is that I ought to be an independent legal contractor, freelancer, we now call it, a fractional general counsel. And so that I could work with a number of these companies at a time. And so that's what I've been doing for the last year and a bit here is taking what I've learned throughout that journey. My 16-year career, as you were saying in the intro, and applying it with 5, 6 companies at a time at any point, and just really, really enjoying it. Yeah.
Wow, such a great story. But as someone who is like really new to the concept of rational general counsel, in your opinion, how is it different from a traditional general counsel? Like, why the tendency there?
Yeah. So a traditional general counsel will be an employee of one company, fully dedicated, exclusive to that one company. Whereas a fractional general counsel, you can think of it more as a contractor, as an external contractor who's there part-time, who is embedded with certain members of the executive team, if you will. It's not the whole company that has access to a part-time contractor, but there are dedicated people that do, and usually it's brought um, in blocks of time. Either it's for a particular project or it's for blocks of time. And say, okay, well, we have a legal requirement. We are usually going to external counsel, and it's kind of spotty. Sometimes it's piecemeal and it's expensive. We would like someone to come in to embed, to be part of the team, to know our product, to know our company, to be responsive and to be our go-to on the legal front, but we don't need someone full-time. So where could we meet, that desire, that need? And is there someone out there who's willing to come in on a part-time basis, and help us out? And so there's a real market for that. I've discovered that there is actually a starving market for that sort of alternative delivery model on the legal side. And, a fractional general counsel, Shopify is not the market for that. Shopify has a whole team of lawyers. Big companies have whole teams of lawyers, although sometimes they'll need someone to come in either with expertise or someone to come in to help out with overflow work. But the real market for fractional general counsels are companies that don't have full-time in-house counsel with their general counsel or senior counsel, but they would like the look, the feel, the sense that they've got someone on their side that is available and responsive and that knows their business.
Oh, that's really great, and that was one of the reasons contacted you. But whenever I'm speaking with general counsels, right, they're always overworked, right? They feel like, everybody wants the work yesterday. So how do you cope up with managing 5 to 6 teams? Obviously, we're growing at their stage, and obviously with their growth comes a lot more legal work attached with that.
Yeah. So it's a mix of a few elements. One of them is having a good relationship, a good rapport with the executive team that you're serving, to right size the scope of the engagement. And when the, lawyers, we have this propensity to do more, to take on more work, and it's fine, and it still happens in a fractional capacity. But if there's a point where, the work is more or a lot more than what was agreed to, we just put up our hands and say, I think we're due for an adjustment, or I literally don't have capacity, or I do have capacity, or I will be able to build that capacity by reducing on other engagements. And so there's a real lesson in having transparent, open, caring conversations in that field. But that's not my first line of defense, if you will. The first line of defense is twofold. The one is planning my time very efficiently, reducing distractions when I do work for a client. And I have leveraged software and legal tech extensively. I am a one-person company. And because of that, I need to use tools to either streamline or automate duplicative tasks. And I need tools to help me manage a workflow. You can imagine 5 companies, they all have their email systems, they all have their Slack channels, they all have their communications channels, their job boards, their Asana, their Microsoft Teams. And so bringing all of those channels somewhat together, not perfectly, but somewhat together with different workflow automations and different systems to track the work is a big, big help, because without that, there could be a lot of wasted time in just surfing through the various channels. Let's just cycle through all the emails, all the DMs, all the job boards, and repeat. And so you get to spend a lot of time just not doing the actual substantive work and losing a lot of valuable focus time. And so I think the timing of being right now in this sort of practice, in this alternative service delivery model, being remote, digital, and having the advent of wonderful tools. 2023 saw so many great legal tech tools come into the fold, and I see the roadmap for 2024, and I'm delighted, because what that means to me is one of two things. I can either grow capacity and take on more clients, or I can get back some of my time.
Right. Absolutely. Completely agree with you. So, what is the biggest advice would you give to startups and tech companies regarding legal considerations, especially related to contracts, compliance, and privacy?
Yeah. Contracts aren't the most exciting things for startups. But most of them are passionate about their products, as they should be. A lot of them will call themselves mission-led. A lot of them will say that they are a product-first company. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because it has yielded so many fantastic opportunities and tools. And what I'd like to say to companies then is to say it would be an enormous disservice to your users and to your future users if you're not buttoned up on the contracting side. So make sure that you have the right sort of advice to structure your contracts, your sales contracts, your licenses, your confidentiality clauses, your payments. If you don't get paid, you don't get money, you can't survive, you can't keep serving your customers. That's just an example. But I think there's a little bit of a propensity in the tech space to kind of break things, to launch first and see what happens. And I think that's all right in a small sample, but before very long, make sure that you're buttoned up on your commercial contracts. And you can actually use that as a tool as well to streamline your contracting conversations. There's really fun, innovative ways to have standstill contracts available online and have a really nice customer experience for the sign up, whether it be through order forms or through click orders online. Just protect your IP, make sure you get paid, ensure that license terms are clear. On the privacy side, I think that is paramount. It used to be a nice to have and a bit of a differentiator when you were able to show your customers and the supply chain in which you were. It was a differentiator when you showed that you took privacy seriously, that you knew what you were talking about, that you were transparent about your data processing flows. Those days are gone. In 2022, 2023, at some point, it became table stakes for you to be really buttoned up as a software company, to be buttoned up on privacy. And not just because of regulation, but because of expectations in the market. There is a sense now that if you're not forthcoming on your privacy posture, you have something to hide or you're not compliant. And so on top of having a compliant and buttoned up privacy infrastructure process or position, what I also encourage companies to do is, if you have a good privacy story, share it. That is part of your narrative. That's part of your sales cycle. Have some sort of a way, whether it be online or through posting or what kind of vehicles that you have to shine through and tell your privacy story in your own words. Tell folks how hard you work and how seriously you take privacy. And on the compliance side, depending on the industry you're in, there's a lot of regulated industries out there. I would encourage you to do the same thing. Well, first, make sure you are compliant, obviously, but then if you have a good story to tell, share that. It's going to provide you an enormous amount of goodwill when you're trying to get your tools, your software, your products out there. It's going to catch people's attention if you're forthcoming on those sorts of topics.
Wow, no, completely agree with you. Considering your experience with Shopify and privacy being a hot topic for SaaS companies, would you have some special tips and tricks for SaaS companies with like a general tech company, or should your advice be the same?
I think with SaaS companies, your market tends to be a bit larger. You're less localized. And so you need to have, in the back end, you need to have visibility and knowledge and expertise on a multitude of regulations. But on the front end, on the customer facing side, I don't think it changes much in terms of the expectations of the market, whether it be Europe, Asia, Africa, or in the Americas. It's now that the bar is very high in terms of what's expected out there in the market. And even if it's just your local plumbing shop who's asking you for your name and email and date of birth, you're like, what do you need that for? And so I think there's less and less of a distinction between the big SaaS and the more general tech tools. If you're if you're asking people for their information, you need to be getting the appropriate amounts of consents for what you're going to do with it. And what I encourage you is to be very transparent about what it is that you're going to do. And the fallacy there is that some folk will say, well, I don't want to tell them I'm doing this thing. Well, there's nothing inherently bad with using personal data as long as you say that what you're going to do. And there's instances where, if I use an online shopping cart provider, I want them to know that I like mangoes, because I want them to suggest to me that mangoes are on sale this month or this week. And so depending on what it is, and same thing with, let's bring it a little closer to home with legal tech tools. I want the legal tech tool to tell me that I have used this sort of identification provision 3 times in the last month, let's say. I want them to make the deduction that this is my preferred template. I wanted to speed up the process, and to help me get through the plethora of information and say, oh, Pat, we see what you're working on. This is likely what you're looking for. And then I can override that, say yes or no. But, we're kind of starting from, what are we suggesting in terms of tech and SaaS and privacy position, and then bringing it home to real tangible examples of tools where they are transparent, where they are clear and unambiguous. about what they're doing, then I get to make an educated, informed decision. I think not just for lawyers, not just for me, but the market in general, people in general have become very privacy aware. Some of them are privacy skeptic, but the vast majority of the market, they're just much more knowledgeable. And so you need to treat them as though they're knowledgeable and be forthcoming with your practices.
Wow. No, completely makes sense. Well, I know because we have a lot of viewers who are law students as of now. So for somebody who is wishing to go into looking as a general counsel, like, imagine that, a new client comes in, like, which has like, 10, 15 or tech team, right? Now the sales team is using a different CRM, tech team is doing a very different stats. Now today is a plethora of like, tech tools which are saying that we will stop, personal identification information from being shared outside. So how do you, like when you take on a brand, how do you go about ensuring that they are privacy compliant?
Well, number one there is to know the product. How's the product built? What's the product ingesting in terms of whether it be sensitive data or personal information? Once it's within the walls, the technological infrastructure walls of the company, what are you doing with it? Are you anonymizing the data in order to make informed deductions about what is the next product that should be developed, or what should the product suggest in terms of next action steps for this avatar of a client? Or are you using the data very raw to make very pinpointed deductions and action steps with respect to this particular customer, and that may be fine? Or are you using this information to guide other customers and clients and inform other sorts of decisions? And this sort of decision tree can go off in so many directions. So my top line advice to law students who have this career in mind, or folks who are already in it or starting out in it, is know the product, and don't make the mistake of making assumptions, of saying, well, this product looks like this other product that I know, and therefore they must be the same. You really have to look under the hood and follow the data. And then in terms of compliance, you need expertise, you need knowledge, you need experience with respect to the jurisdiction you're operating in. Where's the data coming from? Because the privacy regulations will usually apply based on not necessarily where the company is, but where's the data subject located. So you need to know that. And then making a gap analysis, pairing that up with the privacy policies, the data processing addendum, whatever existing customer facing consents and disclosures that you will have. You're now going to have to vary those. And usually there'll be some gaps, but you're really putting the odds in your favor when you know the product, follow the data. You get a good assessment of what your regulatory framework is, and then putting the lens of what do you have currently in terms of customer facing policies, and where do you need to fill in those gaps. And it's an evolutionary field. Every year there's new things coming up. So there's tweaks and adjustments, whether it be to your consents, the level of detail that you're having in terms of consents from end users, or do you need to level up your data deletion request policies? Do you even have one? And so it's a field that is very wide, very evolutive, but one that is fascinating to get into. It's a really good time to get into that space because it is on everybody's mind.
Absolutely. So now let's get into the part of the podcast. As a lawyer, what was your initial impression of generative AI? Like when ChatGPT came out, what were your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts were that it was going to be a fun toy. Right? We're going back to probably October of 2022. Everybody was really excited about it. They would, find these funny questions to get them to answer through ChatGPT. And then it started picking up steam, and it went from a toy to, oh wow, like this thing can actually write copy. And it was still basic at first. But I don't think the tool itself was basic, but I think prompting was basic. And then there was the point in 2023 where people, and myself included, really started to focus on prompts. And what I found there is with the right level of prompting, trying not to say that word too much, but with the right level of prompting, the tools, the generative AI could really produce some useful outputs. I say this sounding very obvious, but it's not a replacement, especially for lawyers. It is not a replacement for. I remember there's a couple of examples. One of them, I remember everybody being so impressed when ChatGPT passed the bar exam. And they're like, oh, well, that's it for lawyers. And I thought, well, a lot of people pass the bar, and you don't want them as your lawyer. And because what that lacks is judgment and experience and expertise learned on the field. But imagine if generative AI could really condense the time between ideation and first draft, and then you have an experienced lawyer who has spent 5 minutes to get that first draft, as opposed to 3-4 hours to get that first draft. And then what you have is just that opportunity to have a fresh, fully energized lawyer put their best judgment onto the product, onto the output. And so that was the evolution from, oh, it's a fun little toy, to, oh my gosh, this could actually be something that is very helpful. And what I found is there's some brilliant legal tech companies out there who have embraced generative AI, who can now really assist in contract review. They can really assist first level contract review, really assist in, one-click contract comparison. You have multiple versions of contract in your Google Drive or in your Gmail. With a few clicks, you're all of a sudden having a fresh comparative view of the last version to the next version without having to go through your whole folders to figure out what it was. You can have some pretty decent contract drafting, isolated clauses, if you will, which you then you say, okay, and with the right prompt, you can say, I'm thinking about, a termination for default clause that has a certain cure period. I want the effects of termination to be XYZ. Can you draft this? And then the tool will pump it out in a matter of a few seconds. And then you say, okay, not quite what I wanted, but I've got my starting point. And now I can craft it and supplement it and have something that's very fulsome and descriptive of the mission and the interest that I'm trying to get to. So the last 18 months has been pretty wild in terms of generative AI. I still use it for fun sometimes. I try not to use it to draft my LinkedIn posts because I like to be creative myself. But there are some really good use cases out there And I think whether you're a lawyer just starting out or just someone who's very seasoned, I think it's a mistake to write off generative AI as saying it's not that good. Well, might not be perfect, but you will see enormous time savings by using it for some things, not everything, but some things for sure. And there are safe ways to use it as well. So, yeah. Have you been using it yourself?
Yeah, obviously. I think using it a lot actually. You might not know, I actually run another company which is called AI. This is completely focused on leveraging chat GPT or other kind of large language models for legal purposes. So we have products from contract review, right? We have products on contract drafting, which are backed by large language models. We have client intake forms. We have like 7, 8 products now, which I'm using on the back end, generative AI. Because for the first time, like I'll tell you my story, what has happened. So before Antro.ai, I'm still running an edtech business, which is called Fusion Law School. So where we train law students in India to be more practice oriented. So the problem that we're trying to solve is that the education system in India is not giving the required skill set to lawyers to be readily employable was they graduate from law school, right? So we start living for humans, how to be better lawyer. Now I'm teaching AI how to, my life story has been, and I'm an innovation believer of the potential here. So yeah, I completely agree with your observations that just writing it off would be a so big thing. It is not there yet. But with technology, one thing you can always ensure is that it's going to get better.
Yeah.
So yeah, right. So that are my 2 cents on this topic. And these days, when I'm talking to lawyers about like how do they think about integrating AI or especially generative AI in their legal profession or in their legal workflows, one of the questions I really like to ask is, what are the 3 most repetitive and time-consuming tasks you perform already? Because I really believe those are the best low-hanging fruits for automation. So,
Yeah.
what would be those 3 tasks?
This is an easy one, but contract review is the first, and that can take many forms. One use case is you get this 25-page contract. Sure, you can do like control find to find keywords, but I find that with the right generative AI, you can actually have a conversation with the document and say, and sometimes the words aren't always the same, but you want to look for a concept. And so you can have a bit of a conversation with the document saying, I'm looking for areas in this. Does the confidentiality clause somehow prevent me from developing my own products? For instance, it's not that overt. So that's just one example. So, so there needs to be some sort of tooling and capability that understands the context of contracts that you can have conversations with, because what that does is it prevents you from needing to read with a fine-tooth comb the whole contract to find those areas and then analyze them. So you can say, Pat, look at this clause, that clause, and that one, and I go in on that. Later on, I'll do a more programmatic review, but I know what I'm worried about in the first instance. Client needs now, they need a quick response. So, contract review, augmentation capabilities, really helpful. I think document management is one where there could be a good level of automation. We can have, a lot of us are remote, whether you're remote or not. We're in the digital age. There is thousands upon thousands of documents in your drive and everywhere else. A lot of it is decentralized. So I think, or not decentralized, unstructured is what I should say. And if there's a way to somehow bring that into collections, it doesn't get you 100% of the way there, but that sort of automation could be very helpful, I find. And then, not necessarily in terms of a workflow or an automation, but almost a legal assistant, in the sense, not a legal assistant, but someone with whom you can have a conversation about arguments, about positions, about ideas, finding gaps or holes in your way of thinking. So it's almost, I called it an assistant, but a bit of a junior colleague, where you can ask questions about stances and trends and positions, and you could say, like, I'm thinking about this thing, poke holes into it. I'm thinking about setting up a digital marketplace contract for a very niche sort of industry. What are things that are differentiators between that and a traditional marketplace? And then you just start to brainstorm. I don't know if ChatGPT can do it that way, but I think what I'm hopeful for is that there's going to be some niche segments that start to come about, to serve with slightly more expertise than just like the general stuff that's on the web that ChatGPT and Bard look at. And I think we'll get there. I think we're going to start to see some industry specific GPTs that are going to be very helpful to a lot of people, and lawyers included.
Right. Absolutely. I can completely agree with you that. Do you, in a way, kind of touched upon use of generative AI for legal research, right? But your thought is that, instead of just giving me the answer, it can kind of argue with me on certain positions. And it's a very interesting point, I must say. Now, my next question is, do you see potential for generative AI in legal compliance? Like, for instance, they can automatically detect if, there's a data you're risk, or if you're not compliant with, say, the XYZ statute. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that would be a very helpful tool. I have a view on the dangers of that, but the dangers do not outweigh the benefits. The benefits are that, if we have tooling, and I think there's some in development currently, if there's tooling where you can plug all of your policies into it, you can do it either through Confluence or Atlassian or like other toolings. And there's software out there that can or that should be able to do a gap analysis,
Right.
based on your practices, or based on your written policies and your actual practices. Here's where we see a potential issue, and so here's what we're going to flag. And then what the team can do is work throughout the year on addressing those flags. It's probably, in the first instance, it's probably going to be more of a SOC 2 or ISO sort of analysis, because there's just thousands of use cases for these. And then, in the years to come, we're going to see it come about in emerging fields. Fintech is probably one, and then general privacy concerns. But I think there is certainly a way to at least do part of the work that a human compliance team would have to do. And I don't think that negates the value in the work of a compliance team. What it does, though, is get them to hone in and apply their expertise. much, much quicker. The danger is if you rely solely on that software. And I think that's going to be a theme in the next few years here for any sort of generative AI tool, any software, any automation. Human judgment, I think, is at risk, because there's going to be human nature. There is going to be a certain segment of the population that is going to just rely on a tool. And I think that is a danger and a mistake. But I also think it can be a differentiator for those who are diligent and ready to put in the work. Imagine how much better you can be, how much more efficient, and how much quicker you can learn if you're aided and assisted by some of those tools. And so you bring yourself as a human with emotions and judgment and experience, and you pair that with a supremely powerful processing engine, and you put those two together, and I think you can be just absolute champion.
I completely agree. Humans is the low is the way to go for me sometimes, or any kind of legal task. But I really believe whenever they get a huge amount from data involved, we humans really suck at it. I mean, it's just
Too much.
Right. So, but why do you see there's so much reluctance from the legal community for adopting these new tools? Obviously, I love what you're saying, but even I think even you would agree that your opinion is in kind of minority. Why do you think that's the case?
It's such a good question, and I only have my assumptions because I'm not in that reluctant sort of a phase. And lawyers they just loathe to think that they have not been diligent.
Right.
They loathe to think that, they will have somehow missed a risk that has the potential of materializing. And so if the machine is not perfect, they're not using it because lawyers trust themselves more than the machine. And they will say that I have professional responsibility, professional obligations, and I cannot push that off to someone or something else. And perhaps there was a time where that was accurate. But I think today, to your point of there's just an overwhelming amount of data and information and facts out there. It is a different world. And to think that a human brain can process all of that information in real time, because clients expect speed. They expect accuracy and they expect speed. But the variable that has changed is how many elements must one consider in coming up with the decision. And that's where I think there's a bit of a blockage in the sense of using the old philosophy that I trust myself and my brain more than anyone or anything. But I don't think you can do that when you're looking at thousands upon thousands of data points. Your judgment will falter. You will be tired. You will be, drained of energy over time. And so I think I'm arguing as to why people should, rather than answering the question of why they don't. But I think they don't because it's a matter of just lawyers training, of leaving no stone unturned themselves. And I think we're naturally somewhat skeptics in the legal profession, and unless we've seen it ourselves, we're not.
Yep.
And so I hope that there's going to be more and more a trend and an evolution. I'm sold. I'm part of legal practice groups from across North America and Europe where, there's clusters and segments of us that are using the tools and using them, I think, well. And it's to our advantage and it's to our clients' advantage because they get, they get those savings, but it's not the vast majority of the legal profession. And I hope one day it will be.
Right. Yeah, I'm on the same boat. Because what really worries me is that, on one hand, lawyers themselves are absolutely legitimate, right? They, they do have a professional responsibility to make sure that, no stone is unturned. But at the same time, in order to boost, they are making majority of the business, especially small. And right now, we are scared about the legal bills that we're going to get, right? And do you think generative AI being able to make legal services more affordable, especially for the small and medium-sized businesses?
Absolutely. And on many fronts. And I'm not suggesting at all that small, medium businesses use the tool to give themselves legal advice. But what I'm saying is it's going to do two things. One is it's all people to be like me at home. I don't have an office tower with an elevator and a whole partnership structure. The fees that clients pay for me are much lower. They get the same expertise. They get the same, or if not better level of service as bigger law firms. But I am at a price point that has wiped out all of that, the tools that are available out there. I'm able to operate in this context. And so you've got the whole layer of legal fees that can be just gone, and you're still getting top-notch expertise. The other layer is that it is allowing practitioners to be much more efficient, much quicker. And so whereas it would take associates, a full team of associates, and a bit of a creep up to junior associate, senior associate, partner, and how many hours that it take to review and to opine on this contract, in that amount would balloon. Whereas now, within a matter of a few minutes, a lawyer can have the contract zipped through and reviewed by the tool, and then you hone in on the important pieces. And so what you get as a result is value. The full amount of the output is value, as opposed to time spent turning over all these stones and figuring out whether I should look here at these legal invoices that have just ballooned. And so what I think we're going toward is a legal cost modeling that is much more affordable and much more predictable. And lawyers can make just as much money, all the while passing on those savings to the small and medium businesses because they've used the tools appropriately.
Absolutely. So, that's what one of the questions that I wonder sometimes. Do you think people will start using more legal services, especially in the North America, if they will more afford?
I think so, because there's like, what are the reasons why people don't use legal services or don't go to their lawyers? I think the number one reason is that, oh, it's going to be way too expensive. The second reason is, oh, they're going to tell me I can't do what I want to do. And so if you tackle those two elements, I think it encourages people, they want to be compliant. They don't want to be sued. They want to protect their IP. And so if you tackle the reasons for why they don't do that, and I think you start with, how can the tools help you with costs? Well, we just talked about how they can. I can sound biased because that's my world, that's my space, but I have seen the savings, and thousands upon thousands of dollars of savings being passed on to clients. And I have some big clients and I have some small clients. Some of my clients are two co-founders that are launching, a terrific app on the Shopify App Store. And, through the magic of being digital and having access to tools, they have access to expertise that would have been unaffordable to them in years past if they needed to go to big law firm lawyers sitting in large towers. And so you attack the cost, and then hopefully the shift to software tooling that makes it fun and makes it accessible to practice law on your own and using a different model is going to attract more and more lawyers who want to be responsive, who want to be embedded, who want to have fun practicing. And so that starts to tackle the second problem of, oh, I'm just going to get a lawyer that says no all the time and writes a long memo, as opposed to a practical, business-oriented lawyer who's also affordable, who's also responsive, and just makes my business better.
Yeah, with you, but I understand I had this conversation with a lot of people, like who are running offices in the big towers, right? And one of them on the record obviously said that, like, what happens is that clients associate our hourly rate with our prestige, right? If there is a way, that obviously we are under the pressure to reduce costs, but if I reduce my cost substantially, it's going to increase my perceived value. And I think that, a lot of lawyers are on that dilemma as to how they can preserve value, a more value to their clients, but at the same time maintain that prestige. So what are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are that at some point along the road, the legal system got broken because it's not about prestige. Everybody's entitled to make money and to earn a living, but the legal realm and profession is not about prestige. It's about clarity around rules. It's about helping your client protect their assets. It's about helping your clients have their product safely out there in the marketplace, being used by those who need it. And so I think, as a premise, before we start saying, well, how do we match the prestige and the value? I would say there's a built-in fallacy there where it's not about prestige, or it shouldn't be about prestige. And if it is, I would argue that you're going to reach a point where it's mutually exclusive. You're either one or you're the other. There's a part there where it's overlap, where you can have a good element of prestige and status, but you're at a price point where the value is a pain. But that's not how law firms work. You know this. So I think there's unfortunate reality that a lot of law firms are just,
So, as you have been like somebody who's really on board with, leveraging tools. So one of the questions I would like to ask on the behalf of the developers actually, right? So somebody's thinking of like, developing a legal tech product, right? What are the things they will be focusing on?
Yeah. And so that's a brilliant question. And I think it ties into the conversation we were just having about adoption and why is it not being more broadly adopted. I think number one is we need more user-friendly designs, right? It needs to be dead simple in terms of an interface. If it's too complicated, like there are some very, very tech-savvy lawyers out there. I'm not saying there aren't, but generally speaking, it needs to be very intuitive from a design perspective. I think that's the first element. The second one is there is still a bit of an issue with accuracy and reliability. Every time we see these funny stories about GPT hallucinating a fake case, and someone like the mistake there is the person used the case without double checking, but it sends a really wrong message about, oh, it hallucinates more often than it should, or it's not accurate. And so finding some way to filter out the errors in the poor quality inputs, or to make sure that the output is high quality. And so, because there's a lot of garbage on the internet. And so there has to be a way to remove that from the LLM. And the third is, I would probably say, customization of options, right? Like if we could start niching down, I'm a family lawyer. I'm working on, a separation agreement in the state of Wisconsin. Here's my question. Here's the fact pattern. Person A, person B, parents of 2 children, revenue X, sort of thing. So if there could be some sort of customization in various legal fields, I think that would encourage people to not only adopt the tools, but probably pay for them as well.
Right. Wow. That I completely think these are very interesting points. I completely, there's a lot to think about that. So, and then the last question that I have is that, do you have any advice for aspiring lawyers who are interested in pursuing a path similar to you?
Continue learning, right? Don't pick a field right out of law school and commit to it at the expense of learning new things or learning fields that are peripheral or ancillary to what you thought your main field was going to be, because you will find that the market often dictates what is needed. As a lawyer, you will not create the need. Right. As a lawyer, you will identify needs and you will maybe help clients see that they have a particular need, but the need will exist. So follow the market, follow, regulations, and follow expectations. Unless you want to be a constitutional lawyer, which there's nothing wrong with it, but we're talking about tech, we're talking about markets, we're talking about commercialized products. Keep an open mind there. And so, paired with that is stay flexible and adaptable to what you see in terms of varied legal roles, varied legal challenges. Stay diligent, but when there's opportunities to work on something that is a little bit of a stretch, you have the opportunity to do that. I encourage you to use it, and then just embrace conversations and community.
Right.
Use your social media platform to join practice groups, to follow and to speak to people who are in your space. See what they're thinking about. If they're 10, 15 years ahead of you, they probably have some good things to say. And so whether or not you're in a current job, in a law firm, in a company, make sure that you're building community, you're consuming information that is, within your space or in and around your space, and that you have a great opportunity these days to have access to points of views that are global. And so embrace that.
Wow, such a great advice. So thank you, Pat, for sharing your wealth of knowledge about the legal profession and also working as a general counsel and fractional counsel for tech companies. And thanks to our listeners as well for joining on this journey. Stay tuned for more episodes where we unravel the stories behind the experts shaping the legal industry.